I'd like to now welcome Katherine Ravenswood, who is a dear friend of mine and has been doing a lot of care and support research and work for care and support workers for a number of years now. Welcome to PSA, and we look forward to hearing about your report. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. So what I plan to do today is just give you quite a brief, just some points in the report. The report is available online now, and there's a lot of information in it. So I'm literally going to speak the least, I hope. As a professor and someone who's lectured for nearly 20 years, that's a challenge. But what is really important about today is that we have the voices of the people who can really make sense and meaning of the stats, of the data. We have Kate and Robyn from PSA and Ed2 respectively, who will talk about theirs and other support workers' experiences of violence. We have Debbie Hughes, who's CE of the Disability Support Network, and then we're very honoured to have the Honourable Jan Tinetti and Member of Parliament Lawrence Junan to come and provide their perspective on this report as well. So thank you all very much for agreeing to come and speak and to really put the life into the data. Also, not last at all, but thank you so much to Melissa, Sarah, Katie, and the team at PSA who said, actually, let's host it and do it in person in Wellington, rather than the academic just hiding behind a webinar, which was my original plan. So thank you for making this possible. Because AUT's in Auckland, it's a little bit hard to get things on the ground in Wellington. Is that? Yep. So, if you Google that title, hope the report should come up, but it is definitely, it's freely available online. I forgot the link in the end. One of the key things this report shows, and probably a lot of you in the room will know, is that in home and community care, disability support, mental health and addiction support, workplace violence is common and it is tolerated. So from the respondents to the survey, nearly 80% reported that they've experienced workplace violence in their jobs at some point. And then less than half of respondents felt that their employer made it clear that workplace violence should not be tolerated. And nearly a quarter of respondents experience violence on a daily or weekly basis. So workplace violence, some people have said, why are you using the term violence? Because that is exactly what it is. And part of tolerating abuse at work is not actually speaking about what is happening. Just a little bit about some of what actually happens. Psychological violence, so for example, bullying, threats, or intimidation. 72.5%, so that's nearly 3/4 of the support workers who answered the survey experienced verbal abuse or intimidation from colleagues or managers. 85.3% have experienced the same from people accessing services, which in these sectors could include people in the client's households. In terms of physical violence, 27.1% experienced hitting, pushing, or other physical violence from colleagues or managers, and 67.9% experienced physical violence at least once from clients or people in their households. Fewer support workers have experienced sexual harassment and violence, but it still happens, and that is really damning. None of us should go to work and experience any violence, and none of us should experience any sexual harassment or violence. So it still happens. Another thing this survey indicates too is that some of workplace violence is informed by systemic discrimination. There is sexist and racist workplace violence happening. So just over 1/3 of respondents reported psychological violence targeting their gender and sexual harassment targeting their gender. Nearly half of Māori respondents and more than half of those identifying as another ethnicity other than Pākehā reported psychological violence targeting their ethnicity. So this is a layer that we don't always see when we're talking about workplace violence. This is just one snapshot from the report, but the impact on workers is complicated and across multiple domains, and it lasts long term. So you can see from here that of those who've experienced violence, this is again nearly 3/4 feel anxious or depressed at the time of the incident, and in the longer term that's 50% of people. Similar lower numbers but difficulties eating and sleeping, and there's impacts on physical health. The report also details a lot of the other impacts, some around being able to do your job, remaining in the job long term, and things around increased use of alcohol and drugs as well. So just, it's taking my time, just a snapshot. Some of the gaps. So there's some good things happening. A lot of support workers do feel encouraged to report workplace violence to employers. Nearly 50% are getting training, but that also means that's half of them not. Some interesting things that I haven't put in media are that only 21.7% reported that they are actively involved in developing action plans to prevent workplace violence, which is quite interesting when currently all workers are entitled to be part of developing and maintaining health and safety plans in their workforce. And only 15.6% said that there are forums for staff to share workplace violence experiences and learn from each other. So there are some relatively low-hanging fruits that can be changed in workplaces. So the change that's needed, most starkly, we need a culture that does not tolerate violence. If we go to a public hospital or an emergency department, there are signs saying that aggression is not tolerated. That same message needs to be passed on right throughout the healthcare system. A safety culture also needs good resourcing and regular training to support workers. There were managers who answered this, but the survey, but a very small number. But some of what is coming through is there's not the resourcing, even when there's the willingness to provide training. It is just not able to be done. We need guidelines for these sectors for employers and workers that deal with the specific challenges of isolated work. In communities and work environments where that can be more complex than standard healthcare. And before my voice goes, I think everyone in this room is probably aware that these sectors are chronically underfunded and undervalued, and of course that underpins the understanding of what happens, the overlooking of workplace violence, and the lack of specific guidelines and high quality, readily available training to the sectors. Okay, so that's enough about that, because you can read it later. Kate, would you like to share your experience, please? You don't have to stand at the lectern if you don't want to.
Okay. Right. Hi, I'm Kate. I've been doing this job for nearly 14 years. Sorry, can I start again, please?
Go on.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kate, a support worker. I've been doing this job for nearly 14 years. I wish in an interview for a support worker, they would sit you down and say, this job will test your heart, boundaries, sometimes your family life, and definitely your mental health. You're expected to remain calm through trauma, abuse, grief, and crisis, then go home or back to work and pretend everything is okay. If you don't learn to protect yourself, you will burn out so much faster or get PTSD. If you already have it, it can be triggered. You may think I'm joking about this. The sad thing is, it's true. Me personally, I have been yelled at by clients and family members, narcissistic mind games played by clients, hit and felt up, walked into family members yelling and screaming at each other, to door handles being broken off doors, to seeing knives and guns laying around the houses of schizophrenics. We have no backup, no call button, no training on how to handle these situations. Yes, we do report what happens and what we see and get told to carry on to our next client. Can someone please tell me, how do we carry on seeing a family member losing it, throwing things around, slamming doors so hard, handles are coming off, and axe being thrown at you, to walking into the aftermath of domestic violence? Events like this have a lasting impression on guys like us. If this happened in your workplace, what would happen? Us guys? You think empathy, some form of understanding would be given. I wish. If you are very lucky, you may get offered a counselling session. The only ones who have true empathy, compassion, is other support workers. That is one of our defence systems we have in place. We talk to each other and we warn other support workers not to go to certain clients. Once our employees get wind, no one will go to that client. They will send brand new support workers in who have no idea of the violence that awaits. The system is so flawed. Why should these companies be allowed to put profit over people's lives? When these companies run out of support workers to cover these clients, they are moved on to other companies where the violence and abuse is not told or handed over. Then a whole lot of new support workers go through this abuse. Shouldn't alarm bells be ringing and something constructive done to stop these people's behaviours like this? And if companies do nothing, should they be held accountable? I have never heard of a court case against a client. I have never heard of the police coming for a statement from us support workers. The rules must change. We are mainly women who do this job. We deserve the right to go to work and come home safely. We do not deserve to be abused in any way at our job. We do not deserve to be treated like it was a tap on the shoulder, hardened up by our employers. Another thing I'd like to point out, if and when we report these incidents, we can be labelled as troublemakers. It impacts on how much work we are given, all because we followed the guidelines of what to do in reporting in situations like these. The system needs a major overhaul. Clients and family members need to be held accountable, and so should companies. What we are calling for is clear company commitment for all support workers and employers to preventing violence against staff, an explicit zero tolerance commitment to workplace violence, being treated with respect like other healthcare professionals who have access to tools like we don't, duress alarms, safety mechanisms such as background checks on clients, so forewarning is given to support workers and who's in the house, worker involvement including health and safety reps, the genuine ability to say no and to keep ourselves safe with no repercussions. Where there are known risks or reported incidents, a proper response that will actually keep us safe, like a two-person assist. Companies should be held accountable, regular outside audits of health and safety practice, an independent entity to complain to, and companies fined for non-compliance with keeping workers safe. As support workers, we're already on some of the lowest pay rates. It's tough enough dealing with the cost of living crisis. We shouldn't have to live in a cost of survival as well. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Kate. Robyn, would you please share your story?
Kia ora. My name's Robyn Campbell. I am a health and safety worker as well, ETU delegate. I have been in my job role for 24 years at IT Services. I'm here to talk about violence within the workplace. And it comes in many forms. As everybody will know, it covers sexual, emotional, financial, mental harm, as well as physical abuse. Bullying can be very subtle, and it can come in any form of abuse. This can bring a lot of self-esteem, loss of performance in the workplace. Workers can become immune to such conditions, and they don't bother to report because they think it's the norm within the workplace. Now this can come from client to client, client to staff, staff to client, staff to staff. From families, which is horrible, as well as the hierarchy. Goes up and goes up. Talking about hierarchy, this could be a form of withdrawing promotions, wage rises, workplace conditions. You have to confide in someone that you trust, that you're able to trust within yourself, about your mental health, because it makes you feel worthless, vulnerable, and not valued. You have to confide in someone. You make sure that you timeline everything. You've got to, employees have to have a safe place and a safe proof themselves. That's by taking notes, time, dates for their own protection. I work in the intellectual disability sector, challenging behaviours. They are people that we support, they can't defend themselves. So we have to defend them. So we support the workers that sometimes are assaulted. There's also an issue of when it is okay not to be okay. When a person you might support, physically assault you, a staff member, but cannot take responsibility for their actions. This part here is a big grey area that needs to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Robyn. Debbie from Disability Support Network. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to this important research on workplace violence and community-based care and support services. I want to acknowledge Professor Katherine Ravenswood and everyone who contributed to this work, particularly the support workers, the managers who shared experiences that were personal, confronting and painful. The findings make uncomfortable reading, but they cannot be ignored. Nearly 1/4 of the support workers who responded said they experienced some form of workplace violence daily or weekly. Psychological violence was most common, but physical violence was also widespread. Sexual harassment and sexual violence were reported at levels that should concern us all. The consequences extend well beyond the incidents themselves. Respondents reported emotional distress, loss of confidence, impacts on their relationship, and difficulty continuing to perform their jobs. Some took extended leave, changed jobs or careers, or left the sector altogether. In a sector already facing serious workforce shortages, we cannot afford to lose skilled and committed people because they do not feel safe, supported, or listened to. One of the most concerning findings is the normalisation of workplace violence. Too many support workers believe it is something they are simply expected to tolerate as part of their job. It is not. Supporting people with complex needs can involve risk, but every worker has the right to be safe. Employers, funders, and government agencies all have responsibilities to identify risks, invest in prevention, and respond properly when incidents occur. The research also shows that encouraging people to report is not enough. While more than half of respondents said their employer encouraged reporting, only 22% agreed that appropriate care was provided afterwards. Almost half disagreed that incidents were investigated promptly, and half said employers did not communicate effectively about the action taken. When people believe reporting will make no difference or may damage their careers, we do not have an effective safety system. We must also understand workplace violence through an equity lens. Māori and workers from other ethnic communities reported violence targeting their ethnicity. Workers also experienced violence connected to their gender or sexuality. Our responses must recognise racism, sexism, discrimination and sexual harassment
rather than treating every incident as a generic health and safety matter. NZDSN is committed to ensuring this research leads to action. NZDSN will promote these findings across the sector, support providers to strengthen prevention and response, and advocate for workplace safety to be properly reflected in funding, commissioning and service design. This includes investment in safe staffing, effective training and better sector-wide data. Workforce safety is not an optional overhead. It is fundamental to delivering safe, high-quality support. Importantly, we will approach this work without stigmatising disabled people or implying that violence is inevitable in disability support. Incidents can reflect unmet needs, communication barriers, unsuitable environments, poor service matching, inadequate staffing, or a lack of specialist support. Prevention must include listening to disabled people in whānau and improving the systems around them, not simply placing responsibility on individuals and frontline workers. The message from this research is clear. Workplace violence is common, its effects are serious, and our responses are inconsistent. Most importantly, this research gives visibility to experiences that have too often been normalised, minimised, or left unspoken. It provides a strong evidence base for change and challenges all of us, providers, funders, government agencies, and sector leaders, to respond. The support workers who shared their experiences have done so in the hope that something will improve. We owe it to them to ensure these findings lead to safer workplaces, stronger support, and meaningful action. This research must not sit on a shelf. It should mark the beginning of a sustained sector-wide commitment to ensuring every support worker is safe, respected, and properly supported in the vital work they do. Ngā mihi nui.
So thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou, and firstly can I say thank you to Melissa and your team for hosting us here today at this very important launch. But I also want to start by saying thank you to Katherine for the work that you have done in putting this report together. It is, I said to you when I came in, it's actually really hard reading, but it's important reading. I was glued to it when I started opening it, and actually a little bit horrified at what I was reading as well. I shouldn't be, because there are people in this room that have always known that this was the case, and that's the beauty of a report like this, is that it shines the light, a must shining the light for people like me, people like Lawrence, and also my colleague Ingrid Leary, who's our spokesperson for seniors and is a very critical and key member of our team who are working on what we can do to support care and support workers. So it's good to see us all here to hear the messages and take that forward. I also want to acknowledge the people at the heart of this report, and that's our care and support workers who turn up every day and work with some of our most vulnerable people. They do that job because they love that job, and that's in my own personal experience and professional experience. I haven't met one of them yet that hasn't told me, well, we're here because we love it. We certainly know they're not there for the money, but that's another debate. and we'll be having some announcements about that in the not too distant future, but it's certainly a really difficult job as well. And nobody should be having to make the choice between the job they love and protecting their own safety on a day-to-day basis. Everybody, every single worker, and I've said this so many times, every single worker deserves to go home at the end of the day safe to their whānau. And that's safe both physically and psychologically as well. And that's an incredibly important part. And Katherine, I just want to acknowledge the work that you did in this, that it's not just physical violence that we're talking about, it's the psychological violence that's occurring on a day-to-day basis as well. And what really got me was how inequitable that even is. You know, like we see Māori and other ethnicities other than Pākehā are being targeted because of their race, and the violence that they're experiencing is just horrific. I'm also going to put my neck out here and say that this is a gendered issue because, as Kate said, you know, predominantly we're talking about women who do this role, and you know, again, it's a role that is predominantly women who this has not been dealt with, and it should have been dealt with a long time ago. And so, what are we going to do about it? And I think that's why we're here today, is to talk about what is it going forward. Now, I was Minister for Women, and one of the areas that I know that I was really passionate about was making sure that we ratified the ILO Convention 190. And I can tell you that when we are in government, we will prioritise the ratification of ILO 190, because I now am the spokesperson of workplace relations and safety, and so it will be something that we put on our priority list. For those of you that aren't aware of it, I'm sure most people in this room are, that is the international standard on eliminating violence and harassment in the world of work. And that would send a clear message. There are only 6 countries so far that have ratified it. We've signed up for it, but we haven't yet ratified it. But it would send a clear message that New Zealand will not accept a system where care workers are expected to absorb abuse as the price of doing their jobs. Every worker has the right to a workplace free from violence and harassment, and government and employers must take active steps to prevent harm before it happens. This report is a call to action. We need better prevention, stronger reporting, clearer employer responsibilities, and proper support for workers when incidents do occur. And we must listen to the workers themselves. They know what keeps them safe and what puts them at risks. So Katherine, once again, I thank you for the work that you have done. I think you were a bit humble when I walked in and spoke to you about it, but this work is going to mean something and change trajectories going forward. But again, I also want to say to all the workers who contributed to it, thank you. And everyone who has pushed this issue for so long as an agenda item, to put it front and centre in our minds, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your work matters, and we're going to see that it will matter going forward to put the plans in place to keep you safe at work. And if we are serious about valuing care, then we must be serious about protecting the people who provide it. Thank you for the opportunity to have this time in front of you, and I look forward to working with those of you who have been doing the lobbying for so long and ensuring we do ratify C190 when we're back in government. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Thank you, Jan. And Lawrence.
Thank you so much. Kia ora te whānau, ko Lawrence Nantuku Ingoa. My name is Lawrence, I'm the Green Party spokesperson for seniors, and thank you so much PSA for hosting this, and thank you so much to Professor Katherine Ravenswood for putting this report together. I also want to acknowledge Kate, Robyn, and Debbie for sharing your stories of what you have experienced, as well as my parliamentary colleagues, the Honourable Gentilati and Ingrid Leary. I think one of the first things that drew me to this report, when you're going through the report, is to see some of the discrepancies, is to see the kind of the gender and ethnic based violence, the intersectionality of it all, but also looking at it from the perspective of what the discrepancies between community-based providers as well as private providers, because what we often are seeing in the environment when we're looking at community-based support and care workers is that there is that difference. And when we're looking at the work that you do, which are incredibly important in supporting our communities, and you're doing it for the love of it, that it is genuinely a public good and should be treated like a public good, not for private gains. And we have heard from employers who are abusing your love of your job by saying that, well, they're doing it out of goodness and it doesn't matter how much they get paid. But we know for a fact that you deserve to be treated with respect, with dignity for the work that you do. But I want to also pick up on a few additional things, and this is where, Jen and I work really well in some of the ECE and education space, and one of the things stepping into the health space that I found particularly stark is the fact that even when we're looking at the government budget, we complain about the education budget, but when we're looking at the health budget, that there's a single line from this year, for example, of $10 billion for home and primary and community-based healthcare. What that means is that from a government level, there's not enough measures to ensure that the service that they're being funded for is genuinely being provided. And that accountability measure is really, really important. Because what we have also seen from this government, and this is something that both Jen and Ingrid are very well aware of, is we're seeing changes to health and safety legislation with the changes to critical risks. The fact that we're still seeing no movement on the ACC front when it comes to psychosocial injuries, when we're seeing the removal of pay equity and also a lack of acknowledgement of pay parity for community-based support and care workers, and the fact that we are seeing a lot of people having to leave because, when you have care and support workers having to get after pay for in-between travel, that is simply not acceptable along with everything else that you are experiencing. I also want to say that I think, Debbie, you mentioned that the prevention aspect is absolutely crucial, and this is where our role, and this report is a wake-up call for all of us as parliamentarians, is our role is to ensure that there is accountability and government measures in place that looks to prevention as opposed to being reactive. And I think, again, this comes down to some of the change we're seeing under this government with the health and safety legislation. And finally, I just want to say that, alongside Labour, the Greens are incredibly committed to the work that we do. We are committed to ensuring there is pay parity. We're committed to ensure there is genuine support for home and care community workers in terms of in-between travels and in terms of the work that you do to ensure that there is, like I said in the beginning, that we are treated, that this is treated as a public good, not for private gains, and to, at the risk of using PSA's own slogan, let's change the government, so that way we will have better public services that we all deserve, and that is for all of us. Thank you so much.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you very much for really bringing the personal and the light to the data in the survey. I also want to acknowledge that this, yes, it's written by me, I collected the data, but actually it's a project built up. As Melissa said, we've worked together, it must be 15 or more years now, but this research comes from probably nearly 20 years of talking to most of you in the room, to workers, to unions, to employers associations, to those of you in government ministries and agencies. And that was actually the genesis of this research, was hearing from multiple stakeholders from different perspectives on the employment relationship. And so it gives me great heart, I guess is the word, that we are all here and committed to taking this forward and using it to help create the change that is needed for these support workers and the people that they enable to live the best lives that they can every day. So thank you, and thank you so much, Robyn and Kate, for really centering this around your work and the work that you do for the people in our community. So big clap for all.